The dust of the village road clung to Quacy's sleek city shoes, a stubborn reminder of a life he had long shed. He stepped out of the hired car and inhaled deeply, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and damp earth, a jarring contrast to the concrete and exhaust fumes of his new existence. He was back for his cousin's wedding, a brief, obligatory visit to a place he saw as a forgotten chapter. Quacy was a man of the city, a predator who saw the world as a game to be won. He had no intention of staying. The village was merely a temporary stage. The wedding was a riot of color and sound. Drummers beat out a rhythm that resonated in the chest, and the laughter of 100 relatives filled the humid air. It was there, amidst the jubilant chaos, that he saw her. She stood on the edge of the crowd, a vision of quiet grace, a solitary moon in a sky full of stars. Her name was Alara, and her beauty was a myth in human form. Her eyes held a depth he couldn't quite fathom, and her smile, so gentle and reserved, felt like a soft melody in the noisy celebration. She was the bride's elder sister, a fact Quacy learned almost immediately, along with the hushed whispers that followed her like a second shadow. Men were drawn to her, of course, a moth to a flame, but they always withdrew. They would court her for a time, their faces alight with hope, and then, without explanation, their interest would simply vanish. They never spoke of what had transpired, and the mystery around Alara only made her more alluring. For Quacy, it was a puzzle he felt compelled to solve. He didn't believe in mystery, he believed in finding the right key to unlock the right door. Alara was the eldest of 4 sisters, all born to their late mother. The other 3 were married or getting married, leaving her as the quiet matriarch of the home. This fact, along with her ethereal beauty, made her the talk of the village. Quacy saw her as the ultimate conquest. A girl whose heart, once won, would validate his charm and cunning. He moved in, a predator disguised as a gentleman. He didn't rush. He lingered, watching her from a distance, learning her habits. He charmed her friends with feigned sincerity, endeared himself to her family with small, thoughtful acts, and spoke to her of a future that shimmered with the promise of a big city and a quiet, unending love. Quacy was a masterful actor, and his performance as husband material brought a palpable wave of relief to Alara's family. It had been years since anyone had openly and genuinely courted her. She was an angel, a perfect, sweet creation, and he spent days peeling back her layers, getting closer, making her believe. Alara, in her innocence, saw only the good in him, the care and the love he so expertly faked. She saw a man who would finally see past the whispers and love her for who she was. One evening, as they stood by the well, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, she looked at him, her beautiful eyes holding a strange, knowing look. "You first noticed me in the water," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't swim if you don't know the depth." Quacy chuckled, a smooth, easy laugh that echoed his casual disregard for her warning. He thought it a charming metaphor, a sign of her subtle nature. He had no intention of swimming. He only intended to dip his toes in for a moment. He was going to get what he wanted and then leave, relocating his entire family to the city as soon as the wedding was over. The night he got his way was not a moment of shared love. It was a conquest, a calculated seduction built on a foundation of lies. He had taken her on a long walk by the moonlight, away from the prying eyes of the village. The air was cool, the crickets sang a lullaby, and Quacy's words were honeyed promises, woven with a master's touch. He spoke of the life they would have, of a home he would build for her, of how she was the only woman who had ever truly captured his heart. Alara, in her innocence, saw only the good in him, the care and the love he so expertly faked. She saw a man who would finally see past the whispers and love her for who she was. Moved closer, his hand a gentle weight on her back, his lips brushing against her ear as he whispered his desires. She had wanted to wait, to hold on to the sacredness of the moment, to make it about a genuine commitment. But his insistent touch, his practiced charm, and the relentless stream of honeyed words broke her resolve. The act itself was a blur for her, a surreal and confusing mix of his desperate passion and her own uncertain surrender. She had hoped that the intimacy would finally solidify their bond. Afterward, she lay in his arms, looking at him with an innocent adoration that his skin crawled. But for Quacy, a different kind of horror was dawning. As he moved away from her, a chill of profound disgust coursed through him. There was no blood. The virginal angel he had so meticulously pursued was not what she seemed. The perfection he had built up in his mind shattered, and a cold, self-righteous rage took its place. He stared at her, the sweet angelic face now a grotesque mask of lies in his eyes. "You're a fraud," he spat, his voice a low hiss. "A low-life prostitute. All that quiet, all that grace, just a cover for this?" His words were daggers, each one a fresh wound. Ilara recoiled, her heart plummeting into a pit of confusion and fear. She tried to explain, to tell him she didn't know what he was talking about, but he wasn't listening. His disgust was absolute, fueled by his own twisted sense of betrayal. He had worked so hard for a prize, and it had turned out to be counterfeit. He still desired her body, he couldn't deny that, but the discovery had turned his desire into something ugly and cruel. He forced himself on her one last time, a brutal, resentful act that was less about passion and more about punishment. He poured all of his pent-up frustration and twisted fantasy into the act, not holding back, seeing her not as a person but as a vessel for his rage. By morning he was gone, his family in tow, leaving the village in a cloud of dust and silence.
Ilara was left in the aftermath, a broken shell. The silence of her room was a screaming void, the weight of her words a suffocating presence. She sat alone, staring at her hands, and a slow, haunting laugh bubbled from her throat. She had lost everything she had never truly had. She looked at her reflection, a stranger staring back at her. Her hands trembled, and she began to whisper, her words inaudible and fragmented. The whispers intensified, becoming a strange, guttural conversation with herself. And then, silence. "You asked for this," she whispered, her voice still her own. But a new voice, low and humming, answered from deep within her. It was the serpent's song, the long-dormant part of herself. "She always was," the new voice hissed. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. She wasn't a virgin because she had never been in control. The men who had courted her and then inexplicably withdrawn, the mystery that had followed her for years, it all came into a terrifying focus. The whispers she now heard were memories, glimpses of another part of her. A different personality had always been there, a protector and a predator in one. Whenever a man got too close, too possessive, the other self, the baddie, had taken over. She would charm them, seduce them with a chilling power, and then, in a moment of utter vulnerability, she would do something so subtly disturbing, so out of character, that the men would be so repulsed that they would run, their egos bruised, their mouths sealed by shame. Ilara, the gentle angel, had no recollection of these events. She would wake up feeling empty, not knowing why the man had left. She had been a vessel, a passenger in her own body, and now the vessel was broken and the passenger was gone. The sweet and innocent Ilara had been a fragile vessel, and Quacy's final act had shattered it. From the fractured pieces, the new being, which she internally named Rhea, emerged fully. Her eyes, once soft and trusting, became sharp, like polished obsidian. Her posture, once demure, straightened with a predatory confidence. She felt a shift, not just in her mind, but in the very fabric of her being. The sweet and innocent shell had been cracked, and the venomous core was now free. This new personality was the antithesis of all she had been. Where Ilara was naive, Rhea was shrewd. Where Ilara was forgiving, Rhea was cold, unforgiving, and hungry for vengeance. The whispers she now heard were not madness, they were her new memories, the voices of her new self, the strategy and cunning that would become her greatest weapons. She left the village with a single purpose, to find Quacy and make him pay. Her angelic mask, though now hidden deep within her, would become her most potent disguise. In the city, she would be just another small-town girl trying to make it. But beneath the surface, she would be a hunter, and her prey was a man who believed he had won. Ria's journey to the city was a masterclass in manipulation. She didn't rely on luck, she orchestrated her opportunities. She went straight to the heart of the city's financial district, an ecosystem of power and greed that Quacy had thrived in. She knew that to beat a man like him, she had to understand his world. With a batty but smart approach, she crafted her identity. She had a perfect, polite resume, but in interviews she used her intoxicating charm and sharp wit. Her body was a tool, and she wielded it with precision. She chose her clothes to highlight her curves in a way that screamed sophistication, not desperation. She walked with a confidence that drew eyes, a rhythm that was both graceful and predatory. She wasn't just a pretty face, she was a puzzle waiting to be solved, and every man she encountered wanted to be the one to solve it. She landed a job as an administrative assistant at a high-end investment firm, a place where she could learn the language of money, power, and deceit. She soaked it all in, from the hushed conversations about leveraged buyouts to the backstabbing politics of the corporate world. Within months, she was indispensable. She wasn't a hard worker, she was a brilliant manipulator. She knew what to say, who to talk to, and when to be silent. Her presence was both alluring and disarming. Men were drawn to her, but her intelligence and subtle air of control kept them at bay, admiring from a distance. It was there, while perusing client files, that she found him. Quacy Moniz. The name sent a cold thrill through her. He was a rising star in real estate, known for his cutthroat deals and his flamboyant lifestyle. He was exactly where she needed him to be. She studied his profile, his business partners, his financial statements, and most importantly, his social patterns. She engineered their meeting with the precision of a master assassin. She knew his favorite haunts, the kind of women he liked, the batty but classy types, with wide hips and little exposed cleavage, women who looked dangerous but were easily tamed by his ego. She crafted her image to be the ultimate version of his fantasy, a woman who had the soft allure of the village but the sharp intellect of the city. She appeared at a members-only lounge she knew he frequented. She was dressed in a sleek, emerald green dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, yet her expression held a hint of that village innocence that had first captivated him. He saw her from across the room, his gaze immediately drawn to her. He didn't recognize her. How could he? The gentle Alara had been erased. The woman before him was a goddess of allure and power, a dangerous blend of beauty and intelligence. He approached her, his smile practiced, and his words smooth. "You feel like I know you from somewhere," he said, the oldest line in the book. Alara smiled, a slow, seductive curve of her lips. "I doubt it," she purred, her voice a low and confident hum. "I'm a difficult woman to forget." And just like that, the trap was set. Ria didn't just become his lover, she became his shadow, a silent, beautiful cancer on his life. She took a job as his personal assistant, a position that gave her access to everything, his calendar, his finances, his deepest insecurities. She would whisper sweet nothings in his ear while quietly dismantling his empire, brick by agonizing brick. Her revenge was a slow, agonizing poison. First, the money. She would subtly redirect his investments into risky, unstable ventures, ensuring the losses were just small enough not to be noticed immediately. While he celebrated a new contract, she would secretly plant a loophole that would bleed him dry over time. She convinced him to fire his most loyal, most competent employees, whispering that they were a threat to his success, a distraction from her. He, blinded by his growing obsession with her, saw only her loyalty, her possessiveness as a form of love. He was becoming isolated, and he didn't even know it was her doing. She used his weakness, his pride, and his insatiable desire for other women against him. She would casually mention a new club, a new city girl she had heard about, and he, wanting to impress her with his
conquests, would foolishly follow her breadcrumbs. Each liaison she steered him toward was a step toward his ruin. She would leak information to a rival about a deal he was closing or plant a bug in a hotel room where he was meeting a powerful lady client, ensuring his private indiscretions would become public embarrassments. Quacy's business began to bleed. The clients she had secretly diverted to her competitors began to notice his decline. His partners, whom she had slowly turned against him with carefully planted rumors and forged documents, started to withdraw their support. Quacy, in his paranoia, blamed everyone but himself. He became an angry, isolated man, lashing out at his remaining friends and family, completely unaware that the beautiful, alluring woman by his side was the architect of his demise. His empire was crumbling. His friends were gone. His family refused to take his calls. The king of the city was now a pauper in a luxurious cage. The final act was meticulously planned, a macabre ballet of vengeance. Rhea had discovered his most treasured fantasy, a secluded penthouse suite where he could entertain his conquests away from prying eyes. It was here, in this fortress of his own making, that she would deliver the final blow. She arranged for a woman, a beautiful accomplice, to meet him there. Rhea had found her through her networks, a woman who looked like a Lara's spitting image but with none of her innocence. She had a nerdy, almost alluringly geeky atmosphere with thick-rimmed glasses and a quiet confidence that was its own kind of power. Quacy, desperate for a moment of fleeting pleasure and validation, arrived, his mind clouded by alcohol and rage. He had lost everything, but in his mind he still had his body, his charm, his ability to dominate. He saw the woman waiting for him, and a cruel, triumphant smile spread across his face. The moment he was in the throes of his depraved act, Rhea appeared. She stood in the doorway, a ghost from his past, her face a mask of cold satisfaction. "You first noticed me in the water," she whispered, her voice low and filled with a terrifying calm. Quacy's eyes widened in horror. The memory hit him with the force of a tidal wave. The village, the wedding, the girl he had broken. He opened his mouth to scream her name, but it was too late. The chaos she had orchestrated exploded outside the penthouse. He heard the sirens in the distance, sirens that Rhea had arranged to bring the police to the scene for a fabricated domestic disturbance. She had made an anonymous call, claiming to have heard a woman's terrified scream from the penthouse. Simultaneously, a rival, whose business she had destroyed years ago, was at the door, having been tipped off by Rhea. She had promised the rival the location and timing for a raid to find Quacy in a compromising and illegal position. As the chaos outside erupted, Quacy, overwhelmed by a sudden, heart-wrenching pain, stumbled. He clutched his chest, the final, fatal heart attack seizing him in the middle of his debauchery. The man who had taken everything from her had nothing left, not even his life. And he died exactly as she had planned, in a state of utter degradation, surrounded by the fruits of his own twisted desires. Rhea stood there, a silent witness. The triumphant smile returned to her lips as she watched him fall. The vengeance she had craved was now complete. She had made him lose everything while he was chasing pleasure, and in the end die while embracing his own ruin. She asked him not to swim if he didn't know the depth. He laughed. But now he had drowned.